Hello and welcome to Firstpost Live, where we bring you the day's top 4 stories from across the world. I'm Joshua Barnes, live from the Firstpost studios. Let's begin with the headlines. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar slams Pakistan without naming them over decades of terrorism. He says water sharing cannot happen without goodwill. The United States calls on China to exercise restraint and avoid actions that could cause unnecessary tensions. This comes after a series of Chinese war games around Taiwan, simulating a blockade of the self-governed island. Switzerland announces 5 days of mourning after a fire at a bar in an alpine ski resort that killed around 40 and injured 115 people. Authorities say it could take weeks to identify all the victims. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says he is open to talks with the US to combat drug trafficking, but remains silent on a CIA-led strike at a Venezuelan docking area the Trump administration believe was used by cartels. And China implements a 13% sales tax on contraceptives. The move comes amid concerns over an aging population and declining fertility rates. We begin today in Iran, which is facing a serious wave of unrest, its most serious since 2022, as a collapsing economy and a free-falling currency are at play. And in the latest development, protesters are now openly challenging the regime and its foreign policy. Iran is witnessing a deadly escalation in nationwide protests that have been ongoing for 5 days. At least 7 people have been killed in clashes between demonstrators and security forces. Violence has been reported across multiple cities, including southern and western provinces, marking the bloodiest phase of the current unrest so far. What began as an economic protest has quickly evolved into open challenges to the Islamic Republic itself. In the southern city of Fasa, protesters damaged parts of a provincial government building with crowds shouting slogans and insults directed at authorities. Also at play is a historic crash of the rial, Iran's currency, which has fallen to around 1.4 million to the US dollar, and has sent prices of basic goods soaring and made normal trade nearly impossible. Experts say inflation hovering around 40% has sharply eroded purchasing power, deepening public frustration and triggering widespread protests. Businesses in Tehran's Grand Bazaar responded by shutting down, launching strikes over surging food costs and currency chaos. Public anger has spread rapidly and took on a political character. Demonstrations moved from Tehran to other major cities. Now, university students across Iran too joined the protests, chanting death to the dictator, no to Gaza, no to Lebanon, and mullahs must leave Iran. Iranians now question the Islamic Republic's foreign policy and regional wars for their economic misery. The economic collapse has been made worse by the last June's 12-day war with Israel and the United States. Reports suggest that the conflict killed more than 1,000 people and damaged Iran's nuclear sites and civilian infrastructure. The United Nations reimposed international sanctions on Iran, tightening the economic stranglehold and fueling public fear of more attacks and isolation. Now, the government's response has been mixed. Amid the unrest, President Masoud Pezeshkian has framed Iran's economic struggles as part of a broader confrontation with foreign enemies.
We are engaged in a full-scale war. Right now, the enemy has placed most of its hopes on knocking us down through economic pressure. You cannot conquer a nation with bombs, fighter jets, or missiles. To defeat us, they would have to come and face us on the ground. And if they were to confront this nation on the ground, if we remain determined, united, and committed to working together to make our country proud, it would be impossible for them to bring Iran to its knees.
And at the same time, security forces have stepped up. Riot police have used tear gas and force against demonstrators. Offices and universities in 18 provinces were closed to prevent public gatherings. On December the 31st, Iran also appointed a new central bank governor following a record fall in its currency. However, inflation in Iran is widely expected to worsen. And with sanctions, corruption and policy failures unaddressed, Iran faces a deadlock as its political and economic crisis continues to deepen. Shifting focus to Bangladesh now, where a brutal attack on a Hindu businessman has sparked fresh concern over minority safety just weeks ahead of the crucial national elections. This is the fourth such fatal attack on a Hindu person in just 2 weeks. The latest, a Hindu trader was stabbed and set on fire in a district 90 kilometres south of Dhaka. Police say the 50-year-old Khokon Chandra was assaulted late on Wednesday night while returning home after closing his medicine shop. Reports say Das was travelling in an auto rickshaw when attackers intercepted the vehicle, dragged him out, beat him, hacked him with sharp weapons and then poured petrol on his head before setting him on fire. In a desperate attempt to save his life, Das is reported to have jumped into a roadside pond as locals raised the alarm. The attackers then fled the scene. The victim was shifted to a hospital in Dhaka where he remains in a critical condition, battling for his life. Earlier on December the 18th, a 25-year-old Hindu man, Dipu Chandra Das, was lynched by a mob in Maimen Singh district over alleged blasphemy. Less than a week later, on December the 24th, another Hindu man was lynched in Rajbari over alleged extortion. Experts say the number of attacks on minorities in Bangladesh is grossly underreported, and that India must use diplomatic muscle to push for the safety of minorities in their neighbouring country.
Well, it may not be the fourth attack. There have been many attacks on Hindus. Secondly, this evening, a 35-year-old Muslim lawyer was attacked. There is anarchy in Bangladesh. India has to use diplomacy.
Officially, New Delhi has called upon Dhaka to ensure the safety and security of its minorities.
The unremitting hostility against minorities in Bangladesh, including Hindus, Christians and Buddhists, at the hands of extremists is a matter of grave concern. We condemn the recent gruesome killing of a Hindu youth in Maimen Singh and expect that the perpetrators of the crime would be brought to justice.
And this is unfolding just weeks before Bangladesh goes to the polls on February the 12th. This will be the country's first election since the fall of Sheikh Hasina's government last year. She was ousted after weeks of student-led protests and a violent uprising. And in these polls, a once-banned Islamist party, Jamaat-e-Islami, is expected to post its strongest performance in nearly 17 years. The party, which advocates Islamic governance under Sharia law, has already held talks with major political players and says it is open to joining the next administration.
Because we want to see a stable nation, at least for 5 years. If the parties come together, that we'll run the government together. But we have given 3 conditions to every party.
And critics warn that the normalisation of Islamist forces could further deepen insecurity for religious minorities at a time when law and order is already under strain. With Islamist parties set to play a key role in the next political setup, the coming weeks may prove crucial, not just for Bangladesh's democracy, but for the safety of its most vulnerable communities. Let's shift focus to North Korea, where it appears the road is being paved for the next leader after Kim Jong-un. And the architect of this successor, Kim Jong-un himself. The North Korean leader visited the nation's most symbolic mausoleum, but this time he was not the only one in the spotlight. Walking right behind him was a young girl, donning black-coloured attire with ribboned hair. It was Kim Ju-ae, the daughter of the North Korean leader. Kim's daughter, Ju-ae, made her first visit to the Mausoleum of National Significance in Pyongyang. The visit was to honour her grandfather and great-grandfather. This is Ju-ae's third high-profile public appearance in a matter of weeks. On Thursday, she accompanied her parents at a New Year celebration in Pyongyang. In December 2025, Kim attended the opening of several hotels in a key tourist zone, once again accompanied by his daughter Ju-ae. For decades, the Kim family has ruled North Korea with an iron grip. A powerful cult has been built around the Paek-2 bloodline. That dominates daily life in this isolated nation. Kim is the third-generation ruler of the world's only communist monarchy. He followed his father, Kim Jong-il, and grandfather, Kim Il-sung, cementing a dynastic line of absolute power. Over the last 3 years, Kim Jong-un has placed his daughter, Jue, increasingly in the public eye, hinting at the country's next successor. Analysts say Jue could soon be elevated to first secretary of the Central Committee, the regime's second most powerful post. The potential move could come during the landmark party meet. Pyongyang is set to hold its first party congress in 5 years in early 2026 to unveil a new 5-year development plan. Neighbouring South Korea also believes that Jue could be in the line of succession. These speculations were fueled by her high-profile appearance with her father in Beijing last year. In September 2025, Kim attended a military parade in China, marking 80 years since Japan's World War II surrender. Jue was first introduced to the world in 2022. She accompanied Kim to an intercontinental ballistic missile launch. Since then, state media has elevated her status, calling her the beloved child and a great person of guidance. These are the titles traditionally reserved for top leaders and their successors. Before 2022, the only confirmation of her existence came from former NBA star Dennis Rodman, who visited North Korea in 2013. He mentioned Jue during his interviews. With carefully staged appearances and growing visibility, questions are mounting on whether a succession plan is unfolding behind Pyongyang's tightly controlled walls. And on to our last story. In the United States, marriage has long been a legal basis for applying for permanent residency, but that path is now under sharper scrutiny. A US immigration attorney is warning that a wedding certificate alone no longer guarantees a green card. Authorities, he says, are now focusing less on paperwork and more on how couples actually live. A green card grants a foreign national the right to live and work permanently in the United States. Holders of a green card are formally known as lawful permanent residents. But that path is now becoming more carefully assessed. A warning from American immigration attorney Brad Bernstein is highlighting increased scrutiny. He says marriage-based green card applications are being closely examined under the Trump administration. According to Bernstein, a legally valid marriage by itself is no longer enough. The primary factor, Bernstein says, is cohabitation. Couples are expected to live together full-time as husband and wife. If spouses do not share a home on a daily basis, he warns immigration authorities begin questioning that marriage. The reason for living apart, work, studies, finances, or convenience is not considered relevant.
If you're not living in the same house every day, immigration is going to start questioning the marriage. And once they question it, they're investigating. And once they come knocking on your door, they're looking to deny you. So, if you want a marriage green card, you live together. Period.
And under US law, spouses of American citizens are classified as immediate relatives and are eligible to apply for a green card. But US Citizenship and Immigration Services say a marriage can still be denied and defined if it is not entered in a good faith. US Immigration Services say that marriages without a real intent to live together as spouses may be rejected, even if they are legally valid. Once immigration officers question a marriage, cases can be subjected to fraud investigations, tougher interviews, and extended reviews. Bernstein says living separately is one of the fastest ways to trigger such scrutiny and then possible denial. This comes as the Trump administration tightens multiple immigration pathways. The diversity visa lottery has been suspended. Work permits for green card applications and applicants have been shortened. And officials are applying a stricter interpretation of what constitutes a genuine marriage. The message from the United States is clear. For couples seeking a green card, the question is no longer just who you married, but how you live after. That's all we have on the show for today. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Until then, thank you for watching.